Hi guys, and welcome to my video for the top 10 horror movies of 2019.
Everybody's a suspect!
Coming to get you, Bobber.
A few rules before we begin, guys. I've not seen every horror movie of 2019, so if one of your favourites isn't on my list, it could be because I didn't favourite it, or I just didn't see the movie. And one last thing is, this is my opinion, guys. It doesn't mean it's fact, it's just what I think. And at number 10 is Brightburn. Now, a lot of people didn't like Brightburn, but I actually really liked it, and I think one of the reasons that I liked it more than I thought I would is because I went into this movie thinking it was going to be bad. I heard bad reviews for it before I went to see it, and people couldn't really differentiate the fact that it does feel like a bad Superman movie. What would happen if Superman became bad? And that's essentially what this storyline is, but I really liked it for that reason. I think it was a dark take on the Superman character, or in this case the Superboy character. What would you do if you were a bad kid with these powers? And I think the movie explores that perfectly. And at number 9 is Haunt. Now, one of the reasons that I really like this one is because it's the exact same as a lot of the horror movies that are coming out lately. You get these teenagers that are going to this Hellfest, for example, and they're getting picked off one by one. You've seen it with the movie called Hellfest, you've seen it in Bloodfest, you've seen it all different types of horror movies, and they all do the same thing. What I like about this one, and what makes Haunt stand out from the rest, is because they take that storyline and they give it a bit more depth, they give a bit of reason to it and a backstory. And not only do they do that, they take the standard things that they do in these types of horror movies and they make it better. The acting is a lot better as well, and even though this had a low budget, you can tell it had a low budget, they used the money that they had wisely, and I think that's what made this a better made movie. And at number 8 is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I was a sucker for Are You Afraid of the Dark when I was a kid. I liked Goosebumps, but it wasn't as good as Are You Afraid of the Dark. And we didn't get Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark in the UK when we were growing up, so I didn't even know about this film. I didn't know about Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark at all until this year, until I saw the trailer for it. I think it's a PG-13 in the USA. I'm not too sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was expecting a light-hearted one, but this wasn't that light-hearted. There was a lot of dark moments in this that weren't scary for an adult, maybe scary for a kid, but there were dark moments in this, and I thought, well, this is a pretty good movie. Not only is it a creepy movie that reminds me of Are You Afraid of the Dark, but it was a really effective horror movie. And at number 7 is Doctor Sleep. I only seen The Shining for the first time last year, and I thought that was a really good movie. It wasn't the best horror movie of all time, but it was a really good, well-made horror movie. But I thought it was one of those horror movies that didn't need a sequel. Now, again, I think Doctor Sleep is also a book by Stephen King, and it is a sequel to The Shining. So yeah, for them to pull off a really good horror movie, even better than The Shining, was probably never going to happen, and it didn't happen. Doctor Sleep wasn't anywhere near as good as The Shining, but I really liked Doctor Sleep. But I think one thing that I had an issue with was that it felt like two movies. The first hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, it felt like Doctor Sleep. It felt like its own movie, but the last 45 minutes felt like it was trying to redo some things from The Shining. But even though it was trying to do that, Mike Flanagan, again, props to him, they didn't reuse any of the scenes from The Shining. They shot reshoots themselves, and a lot of the time it did look like The Shining that I was watching, but it wasn't. It was complete reshoots, so I think that was very cleverly done. So even though some things felt very repetitive, I still felt like I was watching a new thing, a new vision from Mike Flanagan. So for that reason, I think Doctor Sleep was one of the best of the year. And at number 6 is Happy Death Day to You. Now, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because this isn't technically a horror movie. It is classified as a horror movie. It is a sequel to a horror slasher movie from a couple of years ago, so I'm going to include it anyway. But to me, it felt more like an action comedy sci-fi movie with horror elements to it. But with all that being said, I still think that Happy Death Day to You was a fantastic sequel to Happy Death Day. I really enjoyed Happy Death Day, but Happy Death Day to You wasn't as good as Happy Death Day, but it was a little more intelligent. It felt like Back to the Future, as most of you would probably think yourself. And I think because of its intelligence and its quick wits all the way through the film, and its the way that they weave the stories together was really well done as well. I think that it wasn't one of the best horror movies of the year, but I think it was definitely the smartest horror movie of the year, and I think that they used what they had with Happy Death Day. They took all the best parts of it and created this whole universe of a Happy Death Day universe. I would happily watch a third Happy Death Day movie. I just don't know where they would go with it, but I think where they went with Happy Death Day to You was really intelligent. And at number 5 is Child's Play. Now I know a lot of people hate this movie because of their love for the original. I love the original Child's Play. It isn't the best in the franchise. I still think it's Child's Play 2, but I think the remake is one of the best ones in the franchise. That's not saying much because most of the franchise was pretty bad, but I do like the refresh, the retake of the Child's Play movies. When you get a remake come out, most people say, why did you remake it and do it the exact same way you did with the original? They can't have that complaint with this one. They completely changed the storyline but still kept the elements that we liked about the Chucky doll with the Chucky name. I think Mark Hamill done a fantastic job as the voice of Chucky as well. I just think it was a really refreshing take on the Chucky character, and for that reason it is at number 5. And at number 4 is Ready or Not. Now even though this is number 4 on my list and it is one of the best of the year, I found myself slightly disappointed by it. It's still a great movie, as you can tell. It's number 4. I was expecting something like You're Next. You're Next was one of the best movies of the decade, one of the best horror movies of the decade, and with the critics' reviews of Ready or Not and with the audience reviews, I was expecting probably the best horror movie of the year. I didn't quite get that, but even though it wasn't the best horror movie of the year, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And at number 3 is Crawl. This movie was balls to the wall, crazy. From start to finish, I was on the edge of my seat. That's how great this movie was. I really like Alexander Aja as the director. I really liked Piranha that he directed. I liked The House of Eyes. I liked High Tension. He's a really good, competent horror director. I think the only issue I had with Crawl was the CGI. Apart from that, everything was great. I loved the cast. It was a very small cast, which helps in these horror movies. But yeah, Crawl, one of the best of the year. And at number 2 is Us from Jordan Peele. That might be a little cliche because I know a lot of people either loved this movie or hated it. I really liked Get Out by Jordan Peele, but I think I liked Us better. And I think the reason I like Us better is because it was more of a horror movie than Get Out. Get Out is classed as a horror movie, but I think this is more horrific. One thing I really liked about this, and I think Jordan Peele meant this, was he made the movie in a way that he wanted us to guess what was happening, and I think he wanted us to guess correctly because I think most of us knew what was going to happen. We knew what the twist was going to be from the trailers, the TV spots and the movie itself, and I think that satisfying thing that you get in a horror film, guessing what's going to happen and what you're guessing is actually what you want to happen, that actually happens in Us, and I think you get a sense of satisfaction, is that even a word? Anyway, you're satisfied by what happens in the film, and I think Jordan Peele means that. I've watched this movie a couple of times and I've noticed a few extra things each time that you watch it. I think I'm not saying he's this generation Stanley Kubrick or anything like that, but I think he does direct his movies very well, and when you watch his movies over and over, you do see something new, and for that reason, Us is number 2. And then number 1 is It Chapter 2. Despite the negative reviews for this, there's not that many, but despite the negative reviews, I still really enjoyed this film. It's not as good as It Chapter 1. I think it was hard to do that because It Chapter 1 was very scary. If you could say that as an adult. It was very scary, it was very horrifying, and it was a great introduction to the Stephen King novel, and an expansion of what we saw in the miniseries from 1990. This one, not as scary, not as horrifying, but I think we do see Pennywise a little bit more in this than we did in the episode 2 of the miniseries, so that's something that I really liked. The characters, I've said it in my review for this, every character was great. Every character as an adult felt like I was watching the kids growing up. That was great casting. I think what this movie had over the first movie was heart. It was a very emotional movie as well. I felt myself tearing up a couple of times during the film, and I think not only was it a scary movie, was it a horrifying movie, it was a heartfelt horror movie as well. So that is my top 10 horror movies of 2019, guys. I will address this right now. I know some people will have Midsommar in their top 10 horror movies of 2019, and rightly so for some of you. I didn't like that movie at all. It's not in my bottom 10 of 2019, but it's closer to my bottom 10 horror movies than my top 10 horror movies. So there's where you can gauge my view on Midsommar. So my question to you guys is, what is your top 10 horror movies of 2019? And as always, leave your comments down below. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching, thanks for subscribing, I'll see you soon, bye bye.